Radio 1, Berlin.
You're listening to Radio 1 Berlin, and our guest today has been described as the godfather of British performance poetry, the people's poet, and a thorn in the side of the British establishment since year zero. The one, the only, John Cooper Clarke. Or should I say Doctor?
Doctor.
Doctor who?
Dr. John Cooper Clarke, that's who.
Thanks for taking the time during your tour here in volcanically hot Berlin, John. And you're currently touring with your latest long-awaited book, The Luckiest Guy Alive.
Uh-huh.
Any reason for the name, The Luckiest Guy Alive?
Well, it's self-explanatory. Self-explanatory. There's no hidden agenda there. I feel myself to be the luckiest guy alive. I can't prove this.
There's even haikus in there as well.
Yeah, there's 6 of them in no particular order. Yep.
I like the difficult one.
You like that one? That's the one that got me started. That's haiku number 1. We better give it them now we've talked it up.
Oh,
won't
indeed.
take long, 17 syllables, 17 seconds. This is haiku number 1, the one that got me started on the whole haiku business in the first place. I've taken great care to get this right. A haiku is a 3-line poem invented in Japan in the 17th century by a guy called Basho, who wrote for the Floating World School. And it's a poem, as I say, 3 lines, 17 syllables. First line 5, second line 7, third line 5. No deviation. There's no Japanese translation for the term close enough. I had to think very hard about this one. Haiku number 1. To freeze the moment in 17 syllables is very difficult. But I didn't let that difficulty put me off. Here's another one, right on the back of it. Haiku number 5, I think. It's in the book. Haiku number 5. The way to relax. Don't lift anything heavy. And try to keep still. Count them, 17.
1, 2, 3. Yeah. How do they come to you, these haikus?
Well, you know, the writing of any kind of poetry, for me, involves a kind of magic that I don't really want to interfere with by analysis, in a way. I'm too close, I can't really know really how the magic works. It's a common superstition among artists of all kinds, isn't it?
To trust.
It's a kind of intuitive area of the brain that comes up with this stuff. But like anything else, like any other organic process, it quickly dies within you. I think everybody in the world actually has written a poem. But not everybody in the world has taken dancing lessons. Not everybody in the world can play a musical instrument. Not anybody in the world would paint a convincing portrait of somebody. But everybody's had a go at writing poetry. What's to stop anybody? I mean, your language is the stuff of our everyday life. So to corral that language into a poetic form is the next step, really, isn't it? To play around with language. Ernest Hemingway said that all sport aspires to boxing. Well, I would say that all art aspires to poetry. In that, you know, if you take a work of art, a piece of music, a painting, a movie, a radio program, if it haunts you through life, if it has some kind of staying power with you, if you keep coming back to it time and time again, then you would say that that work of art had a poetic quality. And so therefore I say that all art aspires to poetry. But poetry ain't a kind of natural occurrence, and as I say, it very quickly dies within you, you know what I mean? It atrophies.
So it has to be kept alive.
You know, so you can lose it. I found this out. You can lose it. So it's just something that if you've got any intentions of being a professional poet, which I always did have since the age of 13, to somehow make a living out of this thing, I realised I had a gift thanks to an inspiring English teacher at the time. I realised I had a gift. It was a gift that I sharpened into a skill, to the point where that skill was broadcast quality and worthy of becoming a profession. But as I say, you know, this process doesn't take place without some initial effort, you know, to keep this knack. You know, because let's face it, most people just think it's a waste of time. And your biggest friend, if you're a poet, really is idleness. Idleness, indolence.
And how do you deal with that then?
Indolence is a very difficult quality to call up. There's always something to do. You're a married guy, you've got a kid.
Oh, I'm not sure
There's
about
always
marriage.
something to do.
Yeah.
There's always something to do. If you're a family guy.
Family Guy, indeed, yes.
There's always something better to do than write a poem, even if you're on your own, actually. Your work avoidance is... it's a big mistake slaving over a blank sheet of paper. You've got to know when to walk away and take the... You know what I mean? Take your foot off the inspiration accelerator. Do you know what I mean? And it's a very... Like I say, it's a very flaky... Here I said I wouldn't analyse it, and here I am trying to analyse it. But I'm analysing the MO.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But see, I never step out without a notebook and a pen. You know, why? Because I'm a professional poet. That very rare thing, a professional poet. When I expressed a desire to become a professional poet as a 13-year-old child, I was discouraged at every turn. You know, I would say nobody ever made a living out of poetry. You know, even if it's good. I said, well, so I mentioned a few modern poets. You know, Philip Larkin. He was a librarian. Everybody I mentioned had a job in a university or some kind of generous stipend from somewhere or other. You know what I mean? They had some kind of other. You know, poetry was not their engine of wealth. Whereas I thought it could be that. I was very taken in my early enthusiasm for poetry. I was taken with the work of Charles Baudelaire, in translation, obviously. And I read about his life, you know, and he was the only person I could point to that started out with money. And it kind of, the funds ran out, you know what I mean? But he never did anything other than write, particularly poetry.
There's a Pam Ayres connection.
Yeah,
as
Pam
well.
Ayres also. I could point at Pam Ayres. Yes, good point. While I was being discouraged from pursuing this course of, you know, becoming a professional poet, you know, while I was being discouraged from it by friends and enemies alike, even my parents, especially my parents, they want me to get a proper job like all parents do. But, yeah.
Opportunity knocks.
Yeah, the opportunity knocks, right, yeah. We used to watch that avidly. At the time, there were only 3 TV channels in England, so it had millions of viewers, you know. Opportunity knocks, a talent show run by a guy called Huey Green, a Canadian called Huey Green. And the viewers would vote, would send, you know, postal votes. And she won every week for about a year. So there was somebody with a degree of success that I could kind of take some encouragement from. And I would say, and they would say, yeah, but she writes nice stuff about nice things, you know. And I'd say, yeah, well, that's because she lives in a nice place, you know. She writes about her world, I write about mine. You know, I couldn't see any difference between me and Pam Ayres. I mean, obviously I use more bad language than Pam does. But that's all about upbringing and what have you. But the point is, she writes accurately about her world in the form of poetry, just as I write accurately about my world. by means of poetry. So we have more in common than anything, you know. I've never met Pam, but I'd really like that to happen.
What a double act that would be.
I think it'd be great. You know, I've been trying to get Radio 4 to do this, BBC Radio 4, but they seem to think it's about everybody I've said that to has reacted the same as you, Adrian. That would be a double, and I couldn't agree more. But the BBC don't agree with you, apparently.
We shall see. We shall see. Maybe after they listen to this programme, then.
We'd never run out of conversation, Pam and I. You know what I mean? If nothing else, we could talk about technique.
Yep.
You know, until the cows come home.
Yeah. Could be an after dark show.
That'd be
endless.
great. Open-ended.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So from Pam Ayres. Oh yeah, maybe another thing that could be recreated could be the Honey Monster advert.
Oh yeah, that was. Oh wow, that happened. That was a big earner. That was a mega earner back then. These days, you know, if you do a commercial, they got what they call a buyout. They, you know, you get a big flat fee and that's it, really.
Oh, and that's what happened with the Honey Monster.
Back then, no, you got a massive flat fee.
Yeah.
You got treated like a goddamn king. Because they took days and days to produce back then. This is pre-CGI, you know, this is the 80s, pre-blue screen. Everything had to be mocked up. And we had the guy that directed those adverts was a fella called Willie Smecks. And he did that video for George Harrison, Got My Mind Set on You, you know, in the 80s,
oh, yeah.
you know, when all the furniture starts dancing around the room. It's a really good video. Check it out, 1988.
I remember
Harrison,
it. I remember.
Got My Mind Set on You. Promotional videos at Ace. And he's the guy that did them, Willie Smecks. So I get flattened by a garden roller and all sorts of like real Tom and Jerry shit happens to me, you know what I mean? They were great, really great ads.
But how did
Really
you get
fabulous.
it in the first place?
Well, the two people that worked at the two young people, a young couple actually, and they both very romantic. They were a young married couple, and they both worked at the same advertising company. I'm not sure whether they exist anymore. They were called Young and Ruby Camp, and they were a very successful high-rolling ad firm in Camden, and yeah, they were fans. You know, they'd been punk rockers and they were fans of my stuff. So the whole schmear was their thing, you know, and yeah, it was great. We did 3 or 4 of them. And they got more and more expensive each time. Quakers said they couldn't make enough, Quakers. We can't make enough sugar puffs to meet the demand
Wow,
on
amazing.
the English market. Yeah, it was a real big success. Won awards, sold loads of sugar puffs, got me loads of money. It's sensational because, like I was saying, back then you didn't have a buyout. You got a massive advance, and then they took 4 days to make, so you got like $1,000 a day. Back in '88, that ain't nothing, you know. So you got $4,000 on top of your massive flat fee. And then you get repeat fees every time it's shown. Every time it's aired, you get 700 quid repeat fee. I tell you, man, gelt, it was coming out of my ears. Coming out of my ears. Unfortunately, I had a drug habit at the time, which sort of spoke for all of it.
It was nothing to do with breakfast cereal.
No.
But it was the beginning.
But you know, it's funnily enough, it's probably the junkie's staple diet. Sugar puffs. Easy to prepare and full of, energy-giving sugar.
Goodness.
Clues in the title. Sugar puffs. Pure energy in a box.
John, the first time I saw you perform was at the Pink Rooms in Loughborough.
Were you going to be a PE teacher then? Isn't that where they train PE teachers at Loughborough? Don't they have a sort of physical education?
There's a university there. I wasn't at university. I was programming computers, would you believe?
Right. Well, I tell you, he's the head of poetry at that university, Roger McGough.
No way.
Yeah, he has been for centuries. Yeah, that's his. Is it a seat? The seat of poetry at Loughborough University. But they train football referees there and athletes.
There's a big sport thing,
It's
isn't there,
got a
going
sporting bias, the university,
Yeah, so I saw you perform in the Pink Rooms, as I say, in Loughborough.
Where at?
It was called the Pink Rooms, I think.
What, a club?
Yeah.
Was I on my own or was I with somebody?
My memory is so bad.
what year?
I think maybe
Ish. What
Michelle
year
Shocked
ish?
played.
Oh, blimey, that's what,
Same
early
time.
80s.
So it was
Early
80s. I was about 25, so it's about 360 years ago.
Yeah, I remember her.
Now. And I think the next day, if memory serves me well, I lost my virginity, John.
Oh, hey, that's well, blimey, you should remember that day.
I know, I should.
You should be able to put a time on it.
Exactly.
It's a big event.
It was morning.
A big event.
Yeah, I think I went to Leicester the next day.
Deflowered. You're deflowerment.
Indeed.
You don't remember the dates and time of your own deflowerment.
It's all coming back to me now, I think. But that was the effect, maybe, your machine gun poetry had on me.
Really? What, did it have an erogenous effect on the woman that you were with?
I think the whole crowd, everyone was there.
Yeah.
The birth rate went up.
That you wouldn't be the first to say that.
And recently I was listening again to John Peel's Festive 50 from 1977. And at number 5, John Cooper Clarke with Suspended Sentence.
Oh, yeah, Cycles of Suspended Sentence. Rabid
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings us round to, because you performed with the Sex Pistols, didn't you? Joy Division, The Fall.
The Clash, The Fall, all the big hitters.
Banshees, yeah.
Yeah.
And those days, those punk days, hence the punk poet that's been bestowed.
Yeah, well,
upon
that was
you.
very good for me to get involved with punk rock. But I was working, I was doing live readings before the punk rock craze.
Yeah, you were
in cabaret joints in Manchester. There were loads of them. But I had a residency at a place called Mr. Smith's, which was, I was earning a wage from just doing 20 minutes at Mr. Smith's, you know, so it wasn't like I was new to the game. But the point is, the reason I got into punk, you know, one of the reasons was, I lived quite close to a guy called Howard Devoto, who was the original singer with the Buzzcocks. And they actually put that first Sex Pistols, they were instrumental in putting that first Sex Pistols show at the Lesser Free Trade Hall. And the bill was the Sex Pistols, the Buzzcocks and Slaughter and the Dogs. A terrific introduction to the very diverse nature of punk rock as it was then, you know. It quickly became it really only lasted for 2 years. After that it became formulaic and political. You know what I mean? But in that glorious 2 years when, you know, it was a really quite a broad church, you know. If you couldn't get 3 more different bands than the Sex Pistols, the Buzzcocks and Slaughter and the Dogs. They were all coming at punk rock from a completely different angle. You know, the Sex Pistols at that time hadn't written many songs, so they used to keep doing Substitute. They did a song with the same chordage as Substitute, because Steve Jones is a massive fan of The Who. And he's from Shepherd's Bush, so he's kind of quite patriotic about The Who. So every other number was sort of Substitute. So they were coming from that sort of Shepherd's Bush, sort of moddy kind of power pop sort of, you know, thing. And the Buzzcocks were kind of, again, a bit moddy, you know, but, you know, pink jeans and, you know, a lot softer than, you know, buzzsaw guitars, but, you know, sort of a little bit more, I don't know what the word would be, nuanced, perhaps. Yeah. And Slaughter and the Dogs were kind of straight up glam. Yeah. You know, they were like, David Bowie was their main guy. It was obvious, you know. And if you asked Mick Rossi, he wouldn't deny it. In fact, Mick Ronson gave Mick Rossi, the guitarist with the Slaughter and the Dogs, if I'm not mistaken, he gave, because he was such a fan, Mick Rossi, that Ronno gave him a white Les Paul.
Amazing.
Gibson Les Paul, yeah. I'm sure that's not just a product of my fevered imagination. I'm sure that happened.
We can check it. You were also quoted as saying UK punk got politicised and became rubbish very quickly.
Yeah, that's what I just covered that there, yeah, when it became sort of formulaic and, you know, I'm not going to name names, you know, but it became very kind of narrow. very quickly. You know, obviously, as things didn't get around the provinces as quickly as they do now. You know, people get onto things instantly now, within a second of somebody thinking it up. But back then, you know, it had to get on telly in the regions. Well, I was lucky. I lived in Manchester, and we had Tony Wilson, a very go-ahead presenter, on a tea-time programme called Granada Reports. And he was he was just the right age to be captivated by punk rock. But you look at all those bands in the first 2 years, they were all so very different from each other, you know, they didn't all have Mohicans and, you know, there was no uniform. The only rule was no flares and no beards. that was the 2 rules, that's it. After that, you know, whatever you want, really, literally. So I sort of fitted in. What I was saying was I fitted in with that look because I was doing cabaret joints. I didn't look like a hippie, you know, as most people did in late 1975. You know, most people look like hippies. But I didn't. I was trying to make it in this adult world of cabaret, slick cabaret entertainer. Gags, monologues, poems, all with a kind of local slant. But I was wearing like a mohair suit, you know, an Ivy League mohair suit, loafers, short hair, button-down shirts, you know what I mean? And it's hard to imagine now, but people would actually look at me twice in the street, and I couldn't have looked more normal. That's the way things were then. But when punk happened, it all made sense, you know. I had short hair, narrow trousers, you know, narrow lapels, no beard. You know, so Howard sort of said, you know, you shouldn't be messing around in the, you know, your stuff's too good for this crowd, and all this, you know. Well, everybody likes a bit of flattery, don't they, you know. And anyway, I'd noticed Howard around, you know, he was a very striking-looking individual. And his girlfriend was Linder, who did all the graphics for the Buzzcocks. Very, very good. And I'd noticed her around. She looked like Susie Sue before the event, but like 18 months before the term punk had happened. I'd seen his girlfriend around, Linda. She was an art student at Manchester Art College. And she had the black lipstick, the PVC mini dress and all of that, the whole schmear, you know, 18 months early. And she's a really talented woman. Big mate of Moz's. Big mate of Morris's. Yeah, and so I noticed her and Howard, and I thought, you know, I didn't have a name then, but I just thought, yeah, they look good. I just put them down as, you know, boho art college kids, you know. Maybe she's some sort of fashion student or, you know, extremist. She was like kind of Mary Quant, but really more monochrome even than Mary Quant. You know, fish belly white face, dark plum lipstick, charcoal grey eyeshadow, you know what I mean, black hair. Very, very striking looking woman. So I was interested in that world, you know. I'm a real style over content kind of guy. So just from the look of it, I wanted to get involved, you know. And I said, so I'd be okay in these clothes? He said, sure, yeah, that's a kind of punk look, you know. They take a lot from, you know, mod, which is what I look like. I look like a mod, you know. Which is all I've ever been, really, to be honest. It's the only new tribe I've ever kind of been an enthusiastic part of. You know, back when I was back in the 60s. And really, unlike all other youth tribes, really, mod, you can wear that stuff when you're 80 years old. You know, it's just neat, isn't it? Neat.
That's perfect for the next set of questions, the stationary questions.
Okay.
You don't have to be still or anything for these, but do you have a favourite pen, for example?
Yeah, Parker.
Parker, yeah.
Yeah, I would.
Talking about mods.
Yeah, it's upstairs, but yes, a Parker.
I believe you.
I've come out without a pen.
We'll find it.
It's terrible. Parker.
Do you have a preferred or favourite paper size?
I used to know all the paper sizes because I was a printer in the days of letterpress type.
Oh, wow.
So I used to, but I can't remember what they are now. I suppose A4. Fool's cap. Is that A4? What is that in A sizes? Yeah, about that. Yeah.
Renus is
yeah,
pointing
A4,
out.
A4.
Yeah, exact sizes here. When I was a kid, I used to eat paper and loved the smell of books. Do you have any smell preference?
Yeah, I also love the smell of art paper. You know, it's and what it is you can smell is china clay.
That's what it is.
Yeah, that's what you can.
Is that what your book here, The Luckiest Guy Alive, smells like? Because there is a particular
it's not got
smell
any art
to
paper
it.
involved with it. No, it's the very art paper is the very glossy, hyper glossy.
What does your book smell like then? Do you think? Any memories it brings up?
No Proustian recollections present themselves at this point.
Okay, that's stationary questions done. Time travel questions. If you could go back to any date in history, where would you go?
Any date in history?
Today is the 19th.
Well, as long as I could take my family with me, 1965.
That's like 3 years before I was born. 2 years. What happened in 65 then?
Well, you know, everything was like getting better, and there was no reason to believe that it wouldn't continue to improve, you know, indefinitely. It was a very, you know, clothes became nicer. People started looking better. More working class people could buy cars and things like that, and just the general standard of living went through the roof, really, in that year. Yeah, I still think of 64 as, you know, quite monochrome in a way, you know. But 65 was really a mint year. I always think of it, you know, the past is another country, obviously, you know. And I was probably, like all teenagers, I probably didn't appreciate it. I probably thought I had problems. That's what teenagers do. You think you've got problems. Yeah.
If you could bring one cassette back with you.
Cassette?
Yeah.
I've just done this. I've just done Desert Island Disc, so all this is fresh in my mind.
Fantastic.
One cassette. Off the top of my... I'm not even going to think about this.
Okay, yep.
I'm not even going to think about this. It would be Elvis for LP fans only. The first RCA album.
Do you have any cassettes?
Yeah, I've got that. Oh. Yeah, I've got loads of cassettes. In fact, that's most of the music I play at home is via a cassette. I've got a ghetto blaster in every room. It's the nearest thing to vinyl you can get. It's still got that kind of Dolby crackle underneath the music, which I really like.
They never die, do they? Oh, it's being recorded now on a cassette.
Top of my head, Elvis apart, because Elvis is always going to come out on top. Elvis apart, Dion and the Belmonts reunion concert, 1972, Madison Square Garden.
Making notes now. How did your poems appear on the national curriculum? I mean,
nothing to do with me. The education authorities of Great Britain made it happen. Is how, I suppose. I don't know how. Why?
But all school children now study your
I know
poems.
why, but I don't know how. I know why, because it's the sort of... all the kids in Britain, they were all reading... I was, getting rammed down... My poetry getting rammed down the reluctant throats of school children on a daily basis. That feels good, man. Finally, I can make people miserable and there's nothing they can do about it.
What about your own kids? So does your own child listen to your stuff or read?
Yeah, she's
your
a big
poetry?
fan. Yeah, she loves my poetry,
Fantastic.
but she hadn't really known about it until later life. You know, she didn't come. You know, when she was a baby. I mean, I would have nightmares about seeing my daughter in the audience of one of my shows. Because as you would imagine, you know, my shows are it's quite a lot of adult content. I always say this to people whenever I do daytime shows, which isn't very often, but you know, in the festival season, occasionally I find myself doing shows in the afternoon, and I'm always very careful. I've never forgotten this nightmare scenario, so I'm always very careful to inform anybody that's got a child with them that my stuff isn't really suitable for them.
Warning.
And if you're any kind of parent at all, you will take them out. I'll give you 5 minutes. I'll give you 5 minutes of clean stuff. After that, the gloves come off. So get that kid out of here. Get that kid out of here.
We've got
I feel very strongly about it, seriously. There is a lot of that kids shouldn't hear in my acts. In my acts, I'm not saying about my poetry, read it and make your own mind up, but my act is quite adult.
What age would you say? What age restrictions
Oh,
would
18.
you say? Yeah.
Voting age. You're old enough to join the army, you're old enough to listen to my profane poetry. Yeah, I mean, I've made a living out of profane language more than Lenny Bruce and the entire British Armed Forces combined.
So we have some fan questions now, but maybe it's possible to read another one of your pieces.
You want another? Well, here's the title track. My book is called The Luckiest Guy Alive. This is the titular track, the eponymous track. I guess what I'm trying to say is the title of this poem is the same as the title of the book. And the title is The Luckiest Guy Alive. Nothing matters and what if it did. There's more than one way to make a quid. You'll be farting through silk if you stick with me, kid. I'm the luckiest guy alive. Life is one big happy skive. The luckiest guy alive. I'm just waiting for the trouble to arrive. On the fairway I'm under par. At the boat club they call me the commissar. With a monogram tankard hanging in the bar. I'm the luckiest guy alive. I got a kick-ass drag boat I ain't allowed to drive. The luckiest guy alive, just waiting for the trouble to arrive. A broad daylight killing spree. I heard about it on the BBC. Expert opinion tends to agree stranger things apparently happen at sea. Anyway, don't worry about me. I'm the luckiest guy alive. A better situation you could only connive. The luckiest guy alive, just waiting for the trouble to arrive. Time it was the whole of the law that kept my feet on the literal floor, but gravity ain't my friend no more. Oh no, that's for sure. But I'm the luckiest guy alive. I got a facial tattoo saying please revive. The luckiest guy alive. Just waiting for the trouble to arrive.
Fantastic.
The luckiest guy alive.
So, we have some fan questions.
Great.
Do your poems have their own life?
Yes, they do. That's a very intelligent question. Yes, they do. I bring them into being, and after that, it's what they're all about is anybody's business. Anybody's business. I mean, my poems ain't like, that's the way it is. There's a lot. I mean, I can explain every line. I don't ever write nothing just for effect. It always drives the fractured narrative of the poem, So that's a very intelligent question. Yes, they do live. They live in other people.
Your earliest memory? First one that comes to mind?
Oh, well, that's impossible for a person of my age.
Your last dream?
I can tell you my last good dream, but nobody's interested. Nobody's interested in anybody's dreams or their children. Other people's kids and other people's dreams are not interested. However, I did have one where I'm bringing the aforereferenced Dion Francis de Mucci into the equation here. I had a dream that I was in Nottingham, and for some reason I entered this miner's cottage set around the time of D.H. Lawrence, so there was some guy spitting tubercular sputum into the open fire, as his wife made some unspeakable offal-based meal. And there sat amongst them all was none other than Dion.
Wow.
In a fabulous continental suit there, looking totally out of place. And I'm like, what are you doing in here? You're going to get your clothes dirty. He said to me, this gentleman's putting me on at the local social club, miners' social club. And I'm like, fuck that, Dion. I can do better than that. And I became his manager. But I said, I'll be in touch. And then the next scene, I'm in a Catholic church. And I'm there talking to his, I want to talk to his mother, before I talk to Dion, right? Because I want to manage him. So I want his mother to be happy and secure that I've got her boy's best interests at heart. So shift the scene. We're going out of mass. We both, cross ourselves. Jenny, we're going to leave the church after mass. Dion goes home. Next thing, I'm on top of the Chrysler building with Mrs. DiMucci, who, by the way, might still be alive. Last time I checked, she was, which was about 2 years ago. Last time I checked, she was 103 years old. So there I was, on top of the Chrysler building, climbing up a step ladder. She's climbing up that side of the step ladder. I'm climbing up this side. I'm holding a conversation with Mrs. DiMucci. Believe me, Mrs. DiMucci, you wouldn't get a bigger fan of your boy than me. You wouldn't ever find. I will make it my business to take care of him. And she's like, I believe you. You know what I mean? And all we have this meaningful conversation. And then I said, I've got just the thing that's going to get him right back. Going to put him right back at the top where he belongs. And what it was where I live in Essex. I live near Essex University. And they've got a large block of flats there, a skyscraper block of flats. I had this penthouse suite up there. And I'm talking to Dion, I'm pointing down below. There's all these teenage girls. And we're looking through a pair of binoculars each. And it's starting, and down below, they're opening this new pool for the kids, for the students. And this is the grand opening. And you're going to be, the main attraction, Dion, for the main opening of this new teenage pool at Essex University. And we're looking down there, and it all morphed into one of those beach movies with Annette Funicello and Frankie Avalon, American International Pictures. They did about 88 of these surf movies, a beach blanket bingo, Muscle Beach Party, all starring, among others, various members of the Sergeant Bilko cast.
Amazing.
Actually, Joey Ross and people like that, Really good comedians. They were great movies. Check them out. American International Pictures. And they'd have people like Dick Dale and the Deltones and, real surfy movies. But the one linking factor was the boy-girl combo of the lovely Annette Funicello and Frankie Avalon. So here I was, so he knew where I was coming from, Dion, and that's where it ended.
That was the dream.
That was the... He asked me what the dream was, Johnny. I told him, nobody's interested.
Nobody's interested in how people's dream.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple of fan questions. Come on.
There's a couple of fan questions. Simon Wade from London would love to know how the Invisible Girls sessions were put together. That was with Martin Hannett, I believe.
Yeah. How were they put together? Nothing to do with me. It wasn't my idea to put music with them. I'd just got a record deal. The way they sold it to me, it seemed like a good idea at the time. But whenever I hear myself with music, with a couple of exceptions, few exceptions actually, I'm being hard on myself. With a few exceptions, it never works. I'll tell you when poetry and music work. When poetry and music go well together, it's called a song.
I'll never forget that.
Never forget that.
Des from Tragic Roundabout asks, why aren't you fat yet?
Why aren't I fat yet? That's also an intelligent question. That the entire nutritional community are scratching their heads on this one. I eat a lot. I eat the wrong things. I'm a great lover of pies, for instance. In fact, there's a poem in this book, The Luckiest Guy Alive. It's called Pies. It's about pies. So search me, Buster. I don't know. I was tubercular as a child. Maybe that's got something to do with it.
So finally, last question. My 4-year-old daughter Maya asks if you have any poems with unicorns and do you do bedtime stories?
With unicorns?
Yeah.
No, I don't have any unicorn poems, I'm afraid. Bedtime stories? Yeah, if you want to stay awake all night.
I can see you on CBeebies, John, doing your stuff. Well, finally, a poem to end.
A poem to end. Let's have your metrosexual X. I think metrosexuals are a kind of international phenomenon, but if they're not, then they certainly have a place in Berlin.
Good.
No, I'll tell you what, instead of metrosexual X, I ain't been here for a while, I'm going to do a classic. Here's a classic.
Lucky.
Hire car. Right? These are the social advantages inherent in the rented vehicle as itemised hereunder. Double park, don't lock the door, push the pedals through the floor, give it loads and then some more, it's a hire car, baby. Grip the stick, grind the gears, watch that distance disappear, never be yours in 1,000 years. It's a hire car, baby. Hire car, why would anybody buy a car? Bang it, prang it, say ta-ta. It's a hire car, baby. Bad behaviour on the street. Save yourself a couple of sheets, collision waiver, keep it sweet. It's a hire car, show this motor no respect. Bump it, dump it, call collect. What else did the firm expect? It's a hire car, baby. Hire car, why hot wire a car whenever you require a car? Hire a car, baby. Drive the motherfucker anywhere, just like you don't care. Put it down and wear and tear. It's a hire car, baby. Hire car, steaming like a samovar from the front bumper to the spoiler bar. Hire car, baby, try not to kill yourself or injure anybody else. Don't forget to fasten your belts. Rent it, dent it, bang it, prang it, bump it, dump it, scorch it, torch it, crash and burn it, don't return it, lost deposit, let 'em earn it. Who cares, it's on the firm, it's a hire car, baby. Yeah. Good luck, finish.
Infinite thanks, John
Thank you.
Cooper Clarke, for coming in today on Radio 1 Berlin. John performs tomorrow at Fest Saal Kreuzberg, and his book, The Luckiest Guy Alive, published by Picador, is now available worldwide. And now, galactically even. More info on John Cooper Clarke, johncooperclarke.com. We are out of here. This programme was presented by myself, Adrian Shephard, produced by Renus van Alabik, and is a Radio 1 production. Thank you for listening.
Radio 1 Berlin.